And you might say, easier said than done. But, I'm always amazed that the Lord, God amazes me every single day. Every day of my life, I am amazed by God and how He uses things, how He uses memory to speak to us. I remembered something this past week that I haven't remembered in a long time, and it's because of Sail Boston, the tall ships. For those of you that don't live in this part of the country and are viewing elsewhere, here in the greater Boston area, we are celebrating a few days of all of the beautiful tall ships coming into port. Well, when I was 23, 24 years old, when I was a seminarian, the tall ships came to town. And when I was in the seminary, I was a sacristan. And what do sacristans do? Well, they set up for Mass at the seminary. But also, very often, sacristans will have to go to the cathedral to set up big masses to be there to help the cardinal and his secretary. So when I was a seminarian, I would spend a lot of time setting up masses in the cathedral for ordinations and big celebrations. Well, that particular year, because of the tall ships, the cardinal, Medeiros at the time, was invited to celebrate Sunday morning Mass on one of the tall ships, broadcast live on Catholic TV. And as a seminarian, I had to go to the ship 3 or 4 days with my fellow sacristans to help set up. We had to make sure we had to bring altars and podiums and the books and everything that you need for Mass. We had to work with the people from Catholic TV. I was 24 years old. I felt so important working with people from Catholic TV to help set up shots for the Mass. When I first arrived at the ship that I was going to be working on for a few days, walked up the gangplank, I don't know what you call it, the bridge to get onto the boat, I was immediately met by one of the sailors on the ship, and he greeted me like this. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, so I smiled. And the priest from the seminary, just oddly enough, used to be a Navy chaplain. So I went up to him and I said, Father, a couple of the guys there salute. Oh, he said, Dan, they think you're a priest. And in the military, priests and clergy are saluted, so you just salute back. So I said, I felt like a big shot. So all week long, working on the ship, if I was greeted with, I just returned, at ease. It was great. I've always had a great admiration for men and women in the military, and so it was great to be a part of that whole atmosphere. It was great to be working on that ship. By the end of the 4 days, I felt like I was in the Navy myself. I had assimilated life on the ship. I knew people by name. I knew the do's and the don'ts. I had assimilated a lot of the local flavor. Assimilated. In a very real way, my friends, what we hear St. Paul speak of in that letter to the Corinthians is the gift of Christian assimilation, becoming like Christ. He very clearly says that he has been held captive in a jail cell. He has been beaten, he's been chastised, he's been embarrassed, he's been humiliated, but he never countered with the same. He never met betrayal for betrayal. He never countered violence with more violence. Whenever something happened to him that was less than ideal, in a very real way, he allowed the miracle that is the grace of Jesus Christ to work in him. He never countered evil with evil, violence with violence. And he knows that he has been successful in handing on the message of Jesus, that we can be peaceful. We human beings can be nonviolent. We human beings can be compassionate, forgiving. We can live life without anxiety or worry if we only remember that he is there for us all the time. In the gospel, we hear that familiar phrase, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Do you know that that was originally promulgated by Moses, not necessarily to allow revenge? A lot of people don't realize this. It wasn't about allowing revenge. It was about controlling revenge. Very often, if someone pulled out an eye, they'd kill the person, or they would pull out two eyes. Moses, at least, using God's grace, tried to contain violence. If somebody does this, do that, but don't do anything worse. Jesus takes that one step closer to the Father. He tells us never, ever to meet violence with violence. If someone asks your help, never say no. As a matter of fact, give them a little more help. If people come and ask you for forgiveness, don't just measure out a little bit. Forgive them totally. My friends, what Jesus is really asking us is to change our attitude to be like his. And doesn't St. Paul talk about that all the time when he says, let your attitude be that of Christ? A reminder to you and me that when we were baptized, we were given what we need to face any challenge in life, starting with ourselves. If we remember that he is always there, it's going to calm us down. We're not going to be so worried. He's not going to let you face anything alone, ever. And when we allow that to work in us, we find ourselves becoming more peaceful, a little less worried, more loving, forgiving, compassionate. We find ourselves living each and every day to offer assistance and consolation to those around us. And that, my friends, that is how he changes the world, one person at a time. You, me. Allowing his grace to work in us to the point where we have so assimilated Jesus Christ, the living Word of God made flesh, that people can see him in our words, in our deeds. They can see him in us.